Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just gonna give a couple more minutes for people to join, and then we'll get started. Oh yeah, we said we're just waiting 2 more minutes for other people to join, and then we'll get started. If you can hear me now. All right, I think we're going to get started. So just to start us off, thank you all for being here in our Spring into a Career in Conservation, uh, presentation. So just to introduce ourselves, I'm Elijah. I'm the CCF Land Steward Technician at Chatham Conservation Foundation.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Prevost, and I am CCF's Development and Outreach Associate.
And just to give a little overview of how this is going to work, we're going to just briefly talk about who we are, then about some Zoom etiquette, and then we're going to get started with our four guest speakers. And then at the end, we're going to have plenty of time if any of you have any questions for anybody here about their careers or anything else you'd like to ask us. So let's get started. I was born and raised in Grafton, Massachusetts. I went to the University of Rhode Island and I double majored in marine biology and wildlife and conservation biology. And I've had a lot of different jobs over the years, being a marine observer, park ranger, nature educator. Right before this, I was a Terracorps service member, youth education coordinator, um, which led me to now be the land steward for CCF.
So I was born and raised in Foxborough, Massachusetts, but I spent my summers coming down Cape Cod, and in 2019 my parents bought a house over in South Yarmouth. And I also graduated from URI. However, I studied textile marketing, nothing to do with conservation or the environment in any sense. Alas, I am here, and with my position with development and outreach, it is more focused on the business side and the marketing side. And these are photos of me visiting the Cape 1 week out of the year when I was a kid.
Oh, and obviously Josiah Mayo,
Yes,
the owner of the Mayo House where we work.
yes.
All right, so these are our four presenters today. We have Eamon Caffrey from Mass Audubon. We have Ali Ludas from Gregory Lombardi Design. We have Brady Hill from the town of Barnstable, and we have Lillian Pogany from Americorps, Cape Cod. And to start us off, we're going to have Eamon go first. But before we begin, just make sure to stay muted unless you're speaking. Just turn off, turn your cameras on if you're able to. It's great to see everybody's faces and see, the interaction over Zoom. We'd love to do this in person, but Zoom's just a lot more convenient. Use the chat for any quick comments or tech issues. If you can't hear us or something cuts out, just, put it in the chat and we'll try to respond as fast as we can. And if you have any questions, just jot them down, and at the end we'll have plenty of time for the Q&A to ask them for anybody here. All right, so Eamon, go ahead.
All righty. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so my name's Eamon Caffrey. I've been working at Mass Audubon Wellfleet Bay for about 3 years now. I started right after graduating from UVM. My technical title is Turtle Research Coordinator, but that basically just means we do a couple of different turtle programs there throughout the year. So I sort of do that full time now, which is pretty cool. And I'm definitely going to talk a little bit more about that later and the whole process of, seasonal versus full time jobs and what to expect. And yeah, I studied wildlife biology at UVM. So I kind of jumped right into a job with turtles because that's wildlife, and I've been doing that for a little bit now. So yeah, that's sort of the intro to what I'm up to at the moment. Next slide. Yeah, so I guess how it started for me, and I would imagine it's not really uncommon of a story for many of you too, but I've always liked animals, and people say that, but then they go on to do a number of other things professionally. But I was really sort of at this stage in high school where I couldn't really pick what I wanted to do, and I was like, well, I like animals, so let me see if that's even a possibility to study. And then I did some research and found out that yes, you can major in wildlife biology or marine biology or what have you. So I sort of went down that route. I have Steve Irwin and Jeremy Wade up here because I used to watch a lot of Animal Planet as a kid. So those were two of the shows. I don't know if any of you watched Crocodile Hunter or River Monsters, but those were the two guys involved with those. So I kind of was exposed to it. If I wasn't outside, I was inside watching some sort of nature documentary or some sort of something involved with animals, which has just sort of been my interest for a while. And it's the my research and experience and all that stuff is sort of developed throughout the year. So I'm actually at a point now where I'm not that too far out of college and I'm getting to train and supervise seasonal staff, which is super cool. And I'm happy to answer questions about that as well towards the end. But a big thing that I do is education and outreach. So to sort of break my position down, Mass Audubon has two big turtle programs in Wellfleet. In the summertime, from early June through like end of September, we do diamondback terrapin nest protection. So we're protecting nests from predators. We're releasing hatchlings in August and September, and then we do some pit tag and mark recapture of the females. And that's a huge volunteer project. We have over 100 folks on that, going out every day protecting the nest from predators because they're a state threatened species. So that's sort of what I'm doing in the summertime. And then when fall rolls around and moves into winter, I sort of transition into cold stun sea turtle rescue, where Mass Audubon Wellfleet Bay again has a program where we have a ton of volunteers going out to beaches all along the bay side of Cape Cod, and essentially these folks and our staff will go out and rescue cold stun sea turtles. Which, yes, sea turtles do exist on Cape Cod. I did not know that when I moved here. And yeah, we send them to the New England Aquarium, and it's this whole big collaboration. We had around 670 strand within 4 weeks this winter, and it's an annual event, so that keeps us busy throughout the winter too. And yeah, and then that sort of wraps up like around February. So then between February and the start of terrapins again in June, it's a lot of analyzing data, doing other side projects, and thinking about other turtles. We have a population of box turtles on the sanctuary too, which is pretty cool. So yeah, just a lot of freedom, which I really enjoy to do. Work with volunteers, do education. We have a lot of school programs come, which is nice, to teach the kids about the environment. And then of course there's the seasonal staff that I get to train and supervise and work with, and it's a great chance to meet new people and make new friends. I think that's everything I wanted to cover on that slide. Yeah, so I touched on a couple of these already. Yeah, so the big one there, population growth success. The Terrapin program is a big citizen science program. So the really only like research we're doing is with the pit tagging of the females, which for those of you who don't know, it's just a little microchip that you put under the skin, and it gives you sort of a name tag for that turtle, so you can track where it's been as you encounter it over the years. But majority of the program is just volunteers who are mostly retired, because that's a lot of the people who live on Cape Cod are out there a lot. Sometimes in weather that's a little bit too hot for them, and I have to sort of scold them to take care of themselves. But they protect as many nests as they can, and they release as many hatchlings as they can. So the program's been going on for about 20 years now, and we've released, I think, over 50,000 hatchlings. If you keep in mind, only about 1 to 3% make it to adulthood, but that's still a huge contribution to sort of the growth of the population and just what a conservation program can really do for a threatened species. And then sort of going off of that idea of volunteers being in super hot conditions in the summer, they also do it in the winter time. The sea turtles get sort of blown ashore by the wind. So we're often sending these older folks out on the beaches in crazy wind and when it's pretty cold. So there's a big safety component to it too. And I have to sort of think about coordinating all of that. But again, it's nice because a lot of the people I know and have met through Mass Audubon who are volunteering, they all pretty much have the same story. They're like, I wanted to do what you're doing now at your age, but I was told I couldn't, and it was harder to back then, whatever the reason is. So they didn't. And now that they're retired, they're getting back into it. So that's sort of something I like to think about when I'm, like, oh, this field doesn't pay that much, or it's really hard to get into grad school right now, or whatever. Like, really think about how privileged we are to do the work that we do, because a lot of people want to do it or wanted to do it and are now sort of doing it as a retired volunteer. But we love them all. And I mean, it's helped, yeah, over the years, it's helped me develop my skills and understanding for the conservation process, as that bullet point says. But yeah, it really is like I'm out there doing field work, which is nice, but I've been able to develop my skills talking to people of all different ages and backgrounds and everything. And it is really the experience I was told to get before going to grad school is what I think I'm doing right now. So my next step is to go to grad school. And I don't know if I have another slide after this, um, but I feel like that's okay if I don't, because I think I touched on everything. And if I do, okay, one more. So yeah, and then here are my tips for all of you. I went to University of Vermont, which I sort of picked because it has wildlife biology, and I heard it was a good school, and it was in New England, so all these things sort of lined up for me, and I really enjoyed it, and I feel like they prepared me very well in most aspects for going into a job in the field. Um, but I can't emphasize enough just these things that I have up here. Volunteer and getting experience by any means necessary, even if it's unpaid, because there's the saying you need experience to get experience. Well, how do you get experience if you don't have experience? You just have to do it unpaid, perhaps for the first time. And even having that, one summer I was an intern, I worked with turtles. Well, then that's what happened for me. I wasn't paid. I worked with terrapins in Eastham. Then the next summer, I basically had already done the job at Mass Audubon. So they're like, yeah, come work for us. We'll pay you as an actual job. So that's how it worked for me. So sort of working your way up the ranks. Seasonal jobs, I did not know this, which sounds silly, but seasonal jobs, a lot of them will start right about when school ends for like May-ish, and then they'll finish August. So you can do them when you're in undergrad, which I didn't really think about. I was just a camp counselor at a soccer camp when I was in college, which is great. I learned a lot of stuff, but I never got that like feel that concentration relevant experience until I graduated, which is something I sort of regret. So definitely be aware that there are jobs out there that are that short season, and a lot of the entry level jobs, at least in wildlife biology or conservation, are seasonal too. So definitely try to start those as soon as you can. Make connections. I basically got that internship I just mentioned by just emailing someone and being like, hey, I just moved to Eastham. I hear you protect turtle nests. Can I join you for a summer? And then that turned into a grant that was funded through UVM and a bunch of other stuff. And I sort of worked my way up the turtle corporate ladder, so to speak. And then speak up for yourself. That's, I mean, people say that, but I really think it's important to emphasize because you're not, yeah, just, I mean, know your own worth. I'm someone who doesn't really speak up for myself. So that's something I put on here to remind myself of, but also just, it's important to do. And connections really, really do make a difference. And don't be afraid to travel too. This is, especially with seasonal positions, you're going to probably be moving around a lot. So it's not a bad idea to, take a couple months in one state and then maybe another country for the next seasonal position you get. Just be ready to sort of bounce around and be flexible. You don't have to, obviously, if you don't like traveling, but I think it does make it a lot easier and makes your resume all that more ready to be accepted by your next position. Okay, I think that was my last slide.
Yep. Yeah, thank you for that, Eamon. And next up, we have Brady Hill.
Thanks, guys. So my name's Brady Hill. I am the conservation agent for the town of Barnstable, which I will explain a little bit later. It's very vague, I know. So if you're not in that world, I will explain. But I guess I'll kind of go through how I got to where I am today. So I also went to the University of Vermont. There I studied biological science, but while I was there, I was kind of doing whatever I could find to make some money, get some experience. I was a resident advisor, I was a teaching assistant for a couple of courses. I helped run a geology collection, worked at restaurants, all that jazz. But the summers is really where I honed in on what was relevant to my degree and what I wanted to go into. Uh, And so my first summer out after my freshman year, I was the land management intern at Brewster Conservation Trust. It was a great experience, and I made a lot of local connections there that kind of spurred me into staying in that realm in the following summer, where I was an intern with the town of Barnstable and Friends of Chatham Waterways, um, doing water quality things with both of them. And then I stayed on with the town of Barnstable the following summer as well. And having all that under my belt kind of helped me lock in a position with the town of Barnstable after graduating, which was super helpful. I made a bunch of connections doing all that, and I already had that experience under my belt working with water and land management. And so I kind of fit right in as the agent. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I said, I did a bunch of crazy stuff, a bunch of random things. But what really made me want to do all that in the first place, I've lived on Cape Cod forever. Went to DY, go Dolphins, and I lived in Yarmouth all my life. And it's always been about wildlife here. I mean, I was always wandering around the marshes and trails. Of course, the beaches as well. But I was always looking for a new bird or a new plant or a new seashell, something like that. And kind of similar to Eamon, coming out of high school, I just knew I wanted to work with nature, and that's what led me to doing the biological science degree and everything that followed. Um, but what I do now is kind of like a whole bunch of things wrapped in one. I think there might be more of that on the next slide. Um, but my job is split between land management and wetlands enforcement. So wetlands enforcement is I guess I just made up a word for it, but essentially I am a staff member for the Barnstable Conservation Commission, which is a volunteer board uh, made of residents of the town of Barnstable that is tasked with making permitting decisions for based upon the Wetlands Protection Act, which is a state of Massachusetts act that protects wetlands and their buffers, and then the town of Barnstable wetland bylaw and regulations, which are more stringent versions of that act that are locally adopted. So a lot of what I do in the day to day is issuing enforcement actions, warning people not to cut a tree in a wetland, or um, telling people how to restore area that was degraded for some anthropogenic reason. And then the other half of my job, which I'm just getting to do now that the weather's not atrocious, is land management. The Conservation Commission manages, holds conservation restrictions over tons of properties. I think it's over 6,000 acres. And I am the guy for that, which is a lot. Um, but it's really rewarding because the wetlands enforcement can get a little bit uh, it could be kind of tough when you're dealing with a lot of conflict. So it's a good change of pace. And so I've done a lot of projects and I'm initiating a lot of projects where I'm trying to restore the habitats that we hold so that it's better for the wildlife in Barnstable and the residents to enjoy it as a recreation opportunity. I also advise on permitting through the Wetlands Protection Act and the local regs. So I'm working with homeowners proactively to make sure things are all good before they go ahead and break ground on projects. I educate the public a lot through that, and I field tons of phone calls about wetlands in general and plants. Um, but I think my favorite part about it is when I can kind of make people aware of the importance of wetlands and nature in general, and explain why, and And then they kind of become an advocate um, in their own right. And oftentimes it's a lot easier to work with them in the future after I've engaged with them, even if I cited them for some sort of violation or something. So that can be really rewarding, despite some of the enforcement parts being a bit doom and gloom. Um, so let's see what else. What's on the slide here at the top is a meeting where I'm presenting to the commission. Essentially, once a month, I go through and I show them all the enforcement actions I want to do. They approve them. I think this one, somebody put a retaining wall in, and they added a bunch of fill in the buffer to a wetland without asking, took some vegetation out. It was messy, but it's all fixed now. So there we go. And then the bottom picture is actually from one of our conservation areas, and it's a bunch of aphids being farmed by ants, which I thought was super interesting. This is a Seabury Farm. It's in Barnstable Village off 6A. So that was pretty cool. Next slide, please. So I do want to stay here long term, and I see myself being a municipal employee in Barnstable for a very long time and contributing to the town for a very long time. But I do other things outside of work that interest me in the field. I mentioned that I was an intern for Friends of Chatham Waterways. It would have been 3 years ago now, and they brought me on last summer as one of the members of the board of directors, which was quite a surprise, but it's been very rewarding. I work with a great group of folks on water initiatives in Chatham, and it's another great side to public engagement and being really active. And I get to be active in multiple communities, which there's so many differences, but there's so many common challenges between them. So it's really interesting. And then while I stay here, I literally just enrolled in classes for a master's degree. Um, I am realizing I need to learn a little bit more about soils and hydrology, and because most of my formal education is about plants and other biological things, but I want to learn more and I want to be proficient in wetlands as a whole. So I'm studying environmental assessment online on the side of my full-time job at the University of Kansas. As for my tips to people, I I want to concur with everything Eamon said, and I think I did a lot of those things. But I really emphasize just always learning, like taking every opportunity to learn. And I am really cheap, and I realize that there's a lot of financial barriers to getting further education and learning. Like courses cost money and all that, but if you can afford it, or if you could find free ways to educate yourself even more and make yourself more marketable, learn more subjects. Like, for example, the Hyannis Public Library offers Google Career certificates for free, which is very interesting. And I did that just for fun, and it was great. I learned about project management. But that sort of thing is something I always tell people. So I tell my siblings to do, and friends that are trying to build their resume up a little more, and really just doing any sort of experience that's relevant to what you want to do. So volunteering, internships, um, just doing a one-off like workday event with a trust or something like that. All of those can be super helpful to you building your skills up to eventually enter the conservation field or something more specific. So that's the takeaway I have. And it worked for me, and it sounds like it worked for other people. So I hope it can work for you guys too. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you, Brady, and great career tips there. And next up, we have Ali Ludas.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Allie. I'm an associate two at what is now called Lombardi Landscape Architecture. Our office recently went through a rebrand. So previously Gregory Lombardi Design, now Lombardi Landscape Architecture. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Landscape Architecture with a minor in Community Planning from the University of Rhode Island. I graduated in 2016, which means I have been a working person for 10 years now, which is scary to say out loud, but the reality of the situation nonetheless. Um, I was born and raised in New York and have been living in Orleans consistently for the last 4 years. But on the next slide, I'll get into a little bit more about my journey. Um, so when I graduated, I moved here to Cape Cod with my now fiance. He's born and raised from Brewster. And I was struggling to find a job in an office in the Northeast. I was sending my portfolio and resume to offices on the Cape and the greater Boston area, in New York, and basically anywhere I would consider living, and was having a hard time. Um, so while I was doing that, I was working in a bar and figured I'm having a hard time getting a job in an office. So why don't we move to San Diego? Um, Nick and I, my fiance, had been there um, earlier that year on a spring break or something and decided we could see ourselves living there. So we just took a chance, moved there without a job or really any prospects, but just money we had saved up and a dream. Um, and yeah, kind of got really lucky. I ended up getting a job within 2 weeks of moving there for a private landscape architect in Solana Beach, which is in North County, San Diego. He's also the mayor of his town, so that was kind of an interesting uh, person to work for because he knew a lot of people in the community, ended up having a lot of jobs, and it was him and I just working through projects out in the field a lot of the time. So got a lot of great hands-on experience with him in residential design. And then shortly after that, I was only with him for about 9 months. I ended up working for a larger office just up the street from him for 3.5 years. And that exposed me to working in projects within the public realm. I worked on a lot of projects at UC San Diego, um, some larger park projects, like a 200-acre park in Nebraska, some workplace campuses, and retail and hospitality projects. So a whole lot of exposure. Working at different scales for different people was very interesting. Um, and then towards the end of my time there, the pandemic happened, and we realized that we didn't want to be so far away from family. So we moved back to the Cape, um, and decided that we wanted to start working on a farm. Um, we had kind of realized that working in an office during a pandemic wasn't exactly the kind of lifestyle that we wanted to be living. We've both worked with our hands for most of our lives. And we had gravitated towards the idea of growing food for ourselves. So we figured we should get some exposure with that. And we ended up working there for 3 seasons, and it was really awesome. We learned a lot about soils and how to grow things effectively without using crazy pesticides. And a lot of that information is good to know as a designer too, because um, when you're installing landscapes, people think that you have to put a lot of synthetic materials into them to make them successful. But we found out that that's definitely not the case. Um, yeah, so we worked on that farm for 3 seasons. Kind of realized that we were going to be living on the Cape full time and needed more consistent year-round jobs. So I applied to Lombardi Landscape Architecture. I've already been here for 2 years, and we focus primarily on residential projects. And I really like working at that scale. You get a lot of FaceTime with a client, which is cool. Working in commercial projects, you are usually working for a developer and they're not so much interested in what something is going to look like. They just want it to get done as quickly and cost effectively as possible. But working with homeowners is really special. You get to make their homes beautiful and a place that they feel really proud to live in. Um, and with that, especially on the Cape, we work directly with conservation agents in each town all the time. So that's part of our site inventory and analysis is understanding where a project is, what the zoning and conservation bylaws are for that property, and understanding what we can and cannot do. And in turn, explaining that to the client. A lot of clients that we have, their Cape homes are their second or third homes and aren't always privy to the fact that Massachusetts cares about their wetlands extensively. So that gives us a really good opportunity to explain to them, like, you're not really limited by these rules and regulations you have to adhere to. You're protecting something that is valuable for ecology, but also for you as the homeowner. Like, you want to preserve this beautiful landscape you have around you. This is how you do it. Yeah, so that's site inventory and analysis. It's a big part of the project, but also being able to explain design ideas through 2D and 3D graphic representation is important. Beyond that, we spend a lot of time drafting construction drawings that contractors use to build from. We do planting and grading design, and we do a lot of construction oversight, which is one of my favorite parts of the process. And if you go to the next slide, I think I talk a little bit more about that. Oh, these are actually some images of a project I completed in Los Angeles when I was living in California. The left side is a 3D model we did of this retail space, and the three images on the right are what it looked like after it was constructed. So that's a pretty interesting part of the process too, is being able to produce something graphically and then seeing it come out almost exactly as you wanted to in reality is very gratifying. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So yeah, like I was saying, favorite parts of the job, construction administration is really fun. That's a large part of what happens on our site visits. We go on site and work with the contractors to see what sort of issues have come up, and we get to address them in real time. There's always something underground that wasn't accounted for on a survey, and we have to sort of make design decisions on the fly. Assisting with planting layout is always a really fun time too. I don't know, it kind of depends on the landscape designer you work with. A lot of them will sometimes go on site and point where plants should be moved. But I really like being a part of the process and helping people actually put them in the ground. Design is also super fun. Working through construction details to understand how something gets built is exciting, and it makes you feel more confident in yourself as a designer. And then leaving a site better than it was when we started is always really gratifying. A lot of the times the sites we work on have been stripped bare or are full of invasive species. So we always feel really good about planting back with native species and incorporating sustainable practices that address water issues and protect sensitive ecologies. I think you can go to the last slide. Yeah, the top two images are some construction photos of a project in Barnstable we're working on. On either side of that green fence is a 2-acre meadow we're installing, so we're super excited for that to come to life. Talking about learning on the job about good construction practices. The middle image on the top is a wall that was built this winter under a tent. It was really hard for the contractors to sort of take a step back and look at what they were doing. So you can see in the bottom sort of middle portion, how the stones sort of make a frown. Um, Not ideal, but that's just something that happens sometimes in the field, and luckily plants will go in front of it, so it'll be hidden. Um, Another example, that bottom middle image, is an all bluestone terrace. And bluestone comes in a range of blue to brown beige. Had we been on site the day that this terrace was installed, we would have asked the contractors to sort of blend the tanner pieces with the rest of the blue, but they took it upon themselves to put it along the entire edge of the pool, which I don't think looks terrible, but it just wouldn't have been our first choice. And luckily, the client was happy with it. Um, the image on the left is the planting design we did for that same project. A lot of native species in there, mixed with some non-natives, but sort of like climate appropriate plants. We just love the way it turned out. And that day we were on site, you could hear the humming of bees all on the property, which felt really, really great, supporting a native bee population. And then the two images on the right are some of my floral design and flower growing process photos. I didn't really touch on that as much, but on the side, I am a private flower and vegetable grower. Um, I actually won a plot of land through the town of Orleans lottery system a couple years ago. I have a 50 by 70-foot plot in Orleans that I can grow on indefinitely, and it's within conservation area, which is really cool too. So yeah, it's great. That's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you, Allie. That was great. Love the organic flower bit at the end there. And yeah, so we're gonna go to our last presenter, Lillian, if you wanna start off.
Hi, I'm Lillian. I am a current Americorps member for Americorps Cape Cod, and I graduated last year from UMass Amherst with a BS in Environmental Science. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which is, fun fact, home to the EPA's biggest Superfund site, the New Bedford Bay. So growing up in a community that was very visibly impacted, especially socioeconomically, by environmental degradation, definitely impacted my, passion for conservation. But even then, I didn't really consider that that was an option I could pursue. I didn't think that I fit the mold for the kind of person who could pursue that field. So I actually started off, I went to UMass Dartmouth for my first year of college. I was undeclared. I did not know what I wanted to do with my education, but I had some really, really wonderful professors who encouraged me to pursue the field. So I transferred to UMass Amherst, and that's exactly what I did. Um, but as for my background, I have some ag background. My first job was on a farm. And then for 4 years, I was a summer camp counselor for the Fall River Boys and Girls Club. But in my second year, I took a shot in the dark and I asked them if they wanted me to run like a gardening program for the campers. And to my surprise, they said yes. So I did that as well for the last 2 years I was there. And then I interned for the New England Coastal Wildlife Alliance out of Marion, Massachusetts, doing their Diamondback Terrapin Conservation Program. Um, so, I got a lot of experience in the field. And I think this internship actually surprisingly really helped me with learning how to interact with the public a lot. And then for my junior and senior year at UMass, I was a peer advisor for the environmental science program, which a lot of those skills transferred over for this job now because it involved a lot of planning and organizing events. And then just last summer, I interned for the DCR aquatic biology team at the Quabbin Reservoir. And that actually leads me into the next slide because that is how I found out about this program. I had no idea what Americorps was. I had never heard of it. But I was just talking to some of my coworkers, and a lot of them brought up that they had done service years for different Americorps programs all over the country. So I went home that day, did some research. But suffice to say, I really encourage you to talk to as many people as you can. Find out what the people around you have done, find out what their experience is. It can open up a ton of doors, and a ton of opportunities that you never knew existed. So you can go to the next slide. But so as a member, there are four main components to my member year, and those are natural resource management, disaster prep and response, environmental education, and community outreach and volunteer engagement. The first 2 months of the program, you are trained in all four of these areas. So, for instance, for natural resource management, you're trained on how to do shellfishing and aquaculture. You're trained in power tool use for invasive species removal. You're trained in fire safety for prescribed and pile burns, stuff like that. And then in terms of disaster prep and response, that isn't a guarantee for every member year, just because that's entirely dependent on whether or not there's a disaster to respond to. This year there was one. So in during the February storm, we were sent out for 5 days at shelters all over the Cape. I was at the Dennis Yarmouth shelter. And then, of course, after the fact, disaster response also includes cleaning up a lot of the storm debris. So we've been partnering with tons of local land trusts and, for instance, the DCR at Nickerson State Park to help clean up a lot of their storm damage. And then the environmental education aspect of this, we go all over the Cape to a bunch of different schools and do a water conservation program where we just teach the students about the importance of preserving Cape Cod's aquifer. And then for community outreach and volunteer engagement, that basically just means, we show face at a lot of events, we help organize them, and we try to include volunteers as much as we can in a lot of our big projects like herring runs and pile burns. You can go to the next slide. I'm just very briefly going to try to describe what a typical week looks like. So, Monday and Friday is group project days. So that means you're either with like the entire corps or you're with your house, and they send you to an organization and you spend all day on a project with them. These projects usually fall under natural resource management. And then for the rest of the week, you're with your placement. So I was placed with the Harwich Conservation Trust and the Harwich Health Department. With the trust, I do tons of land management and stewardship. I work with volunteers all the time on these stewardship projects and I help them plan their events. And then for the health department, I run the People's Garden Plot out of the community gardens, and all of that food goes to the people's fridge where anybody can take it at the community center. But both of my IPs actually have big events tomorrow. So if anybody would like to join us for HCT, we have Tour de Trash, which is a town-wide trash cleanup tomorrow at 9 at the 204 Cultural Center. And then right after at 11 is the Health and Environment Fair, also at the 204, if anyone's interested. Yeah, and then the next slide is just some fun photos from the job. But I, yeah, I know that it's corny, but I really, really do think that just, talking to people is the best way to make your way in this field. As somebody who didn't, there isn't anybody else in my family who has pursued something like this before. I didn't have any exposure to this kind of thing. It is possible to make your way up. That's all I've got.
All right. Well, thank you, Lillian. And yeah, without further ado, we're going to open it up to questions. If you like to ask them in the chat or unmute yourself. If you are going to ask it over voice chat, just raise your hand so we don't have people talking over each other. Um, but yeah, thank you for the four of you for sharing. I feel like it gave a very diverse view of all the different paths you can take in conservation, and all the different opportunities that open up if you just give it a shot. So, which is very relatable to myself as well, because yeah, you never know where you're gonna end up. All right, so first off, we have our first question. This is for Lillian. Did you get to choose your placements or were they assigned?
So they were assigned to us, but basically, during training, you're meeting with the IP directors directly. You even get to meet all of the placements like before anything is decided, to see what you think would be the best fit for you, and then you submit like a list of your top three favorite choices, and then the program director will place you with somebody, but they do an excellent job with the placements. I think everybody is very, very happy with where they were placed.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm gonna start throwing some questions out there for you guys. Oh, actually, we got another one. This is from Abigail. This is also a question for Lillian. What are some activities and clubs you would recommend getting into at UMass Amherst? Oh, UMass Amherst alum. She is going to be a freshman this fall.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of environmentally focused clubs at UMass. I do recommend looking into some of the events that the peer advisors are hosting. They can be really, really fun, and they can be a really great way to connect with other people in the eco space. But I recommend the UMass Outing Club is very, very popular. They go on tons and tons of trips. And I know that the Sunrise Club is very active. And then also the UMass Beekeepers Society. I've heard they do a lot of fun stuff too.
Great. Yeah, those both sound like very interesting extracurriculars you can get up to at UMass Amherst. We have one from, more of a comment. Is there a website called Pro Fellow that I would recommend looking at for fellowship opportunities? If anybody has any experience with fellowships. I'll leave that open-ended.
Going off that, I also recommend Handshake. Once you get to school, that's one that a lot of them utilize. And when I was in school, that's how I found a lot of my internships.
Great point, great point. Yeah, Handshake, very big at URI. Oh, it's a resource that they wanted to share. Okay, Pro Fellow. All right, I haven't heard of that one. That's great. Um,
You
I have a question. It's for Allie. You seem like you work with plants a lot with your job, and you're very knowledgeable on growing food and flowers. Is there any tips you would have? Because I'm kind of new to kind of more plant things. I've learned a lot from my boss, but of like learning how to identify plants, like when you're out there, like. Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for that?
There are lots of field guide books that you can use. There are actually two plant identification classes I took at URI. One of them was for deciduous trees and shrubs, the other was for conifers. And there are specific books that we use to sort of like examine a tree or a shrub and be able to identify it based on its properties. I don't have those books memorized, but I would definitely recommend just looking for a field guide and using it as a resource.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask your question?
question for you when
You kind of.
Oh, sorry, Eamon, I have a question for you. When you are tagging the turtles, how do you keep track of them? Do they have names? Do they have numbers? What's the process?
Yeah. Well, so we insert the pit tag sort of behind the rear limb. because terrapins technically don't have flippers; they have limbs. That's not important. And it goes right under the skin, and it's about the size of a grain of rice. And then the thing about pit tags is you need to scan the turtle with a special pit tag scanner, and then it shows us. I called it a name tag. It's really like 3D691A870245. So that's just how we tell them apart. They get an alphanumeric code. And then that goes into our database, and then we can like sort of type it in and see. A lot of the time, the females will nest in the same spot every year. So that's sort of the main thing we're looking at is where they'll come up every June to lay their eggs. But yeah, it's pretty cool. But no, they unfortunately they don't get like an actual name.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. We also have another question for you, Eamon. So this is from Abigail. You mentioned emailing someone to get the Mass Audubon volunteer job you originally had. How did you know who to contact, and what is the example of like something you started the conversation off with?
That's a great question. All right, buckle your seatbelts. So let's see. I moved to Eastham or my family bought a house in Eastham in like 2021. I grew up just outside of Boston. So I had never like lived here before, but I was looking for a project to work on for my thesis at UVM, whatever, about wildlife. And I actually saw a turtle crossing sign down the road in Eastham, and I had no idea what it was for. So I Googled turtle crossing sign in Eastham, and then it came up Eastham Conservation Foundation, Diamondback terrapin nests. So then I went to Eastham Conservation Foundation's website, and I emailed like the contact person on there. I think it was their office administrator or something. And then she emailed me and said, "You want to get in touch with this guy, Bill." So then I emailed Bill, and it turns out Bill is a volunteer for Mass Audubon, and he protects terrapin nests in Eastham, sort of as like a separate thing. Um, yeah, and so what did I do? I emailed him, and I basically sent him like sort of a cover letter, what you would just send to any job or anything. I just introduced myself. Said, I need to work on a project I need to study some sort of species for my honors thesis at UVM. I hear you work with turtles. Could I sort of shadow you during the summer? Um, and then he responded back and he said yes. And he attached a spreadsheet with like 20 years of data, which I didn't even ask for. So it's really just like, yeah, I mean, I didn't really do anything special, I don't think. I feel bad saying that, but like honestly, it's just sending me an email, introducing yourself and saying just expressing your passion, and you're gonna get some people who turn you away or don't respond at all. It's the same process for applying to a job or applying to grad school. Um, but yeah, just really, sort of hit the basics like this is me, this is what I'm interested in. The important thing I will say is sort of make sure they understand that you've done your research about what they do too. Because if I get a lot of emails where it's like, um, I want to do this, blah blah blah, and it's not really related to what I do at all. It's like, well, you didn't really actually like take time to think about what this actually might be. So yeah, definitely, do your research and figure out what they're doing and how that could help you and how you could help them. But yeah, it wasn't anything really special.
Yeah, that's great. I had a similar experience in college. If anybody's in college now, another great resource to reach out to is if you have a favorite professor or something like that. My first internship, I just shot my favorite like professor an email saying like, hey, like I'm looking for internship experience. Like, do you have any opportunities around? And I was able to get an internship for the semester that way. So, yeah, I think that definitely resonated of like, it's not necessarily anything special to just start reaching out to people. And worst they can say is, no, we don't have an opportunity. So, um, that was great. Thanks.
I think similar to that, it's really important to be open-minded when you're looking for things. Some people, they're not going to get back to you. Some people might be thrilled, they just might not have an opening. So you have to be flexible with what's going to happen. And you may get lucky and they'll have exactly what you want, or they may offer you something else that's somewhat similar and you can work your way there. So just because it's not exactly what you want to do, don't let that hold you back from applying or reaching out to someone.
Exactly. Oh, great guide Brady as well. So actually, I'm going to ask Brady a question. We work with the Conservation Commission a lot, and it honestly, the 6,000, you said 6,000 acres, right, that you're overseeing in Barnstable, that's a lot. And I would just like to ask you, like, is there any specific project or property that you're like proud of in Barnstable that you've been able to work on since you've become an agent?
Sure. I mean, I haven't been here that long, and there's a lot of people with their hands on all the land in town, obviously, despite that many acres. But I do have a favorite, and I've only recently had a little time to really get into land management. But there's this quarter acre property just south of downtown Hyannis, and somebody was keeping boats on it, and nobody noticed for like 20 years. And the guy was super nice when I reached out. He was like, I never knew. And so he removed them, and now I'm having a vegetation management plan made up with some other municipal folks, and we're going to plant it with trees, and it's just going to be a little cute pocket piece of nature and in this little neighborhood, which is like this is one of the smallest properties we own, but it's been something I've been fixated on recently. So
No, that's great. I think I'm a very big proponent of like doesn't have to be the biggest project in the world as long as you're, doing something to make the habitat better in your community. That's all that matters. So, awesome. I'll have to check it out sometime. Um, all right. Is there any other questions we have in chat? Feel free to put it in or unmute. Otherwise, we might wrap things up here. Um, if there's anybody that couldn't make it today that or you want to watch back on some stuff that was said here today, we will be posting the recording of this online on our website. So feel free to check it out. Again, thank you to everybody that came out, whether you're a speaker or a listener. Um, I guess I will say that I think that having more people in the career of conservation is really important right now, more than ever. And I think just supporting each other in any way we can, whether you're a young professional or somebody like switching up their career, I think it's important. So uh, again, thank you all for being here. And yeah,
Thank you. Can I ask you all for one favor?
Sure.
If you
yeah,
haven't
go
already
ahead.
done this, could all the presenters stay on and you guys could do a photo of all of you in one spot so we can use it for some of our thank yous and social media, if you all don't mind?
Sure.
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And Abigail said in the chat, would the speakers be comfortable sharing contact information or LinkedIn's? If you want, I'm always available to reach out at outreach@ccfinc.org.
Yep, same here with mine is technician at ccfinc.org. And if you need to find either one of our emails, it's on the CCF website under staff. So, and seems like, yeah, you guys are putting your emails in the chat. So, thanks for offering that up as well.
Thanks, everyone.
So I'm gonna get off of this unless you need me to actually do the screenshot photo. I think you guys can though, right? If you
Yeah, we should be
All
okay,
right.
Don.
Thank you all. That
Thanks.
was so
Thanks,
great.
Dawn.
Good
All
to see
right.
you, Don.
Bye.
Thank you.
Is it gallery?
So yeah, for those of you who don't know, this was all Dawn's idea to create this.
Mhm.
Just remove.
She's pretty awesome. She does a lot of our administrative stuff for First Chatham Waterways. She sprung it on me in one of our board meetings. She was like, "I'm asking Brady." She told the 21 member board. I said, "Okay, I'll do it."
So I guess I'm just gonna take a picture with my phone.
Yeah. This very
Here we go.
outreach man.
Don't forget to look at the
Oh, yeah, look
camera.
at the camera.
Everybody look at your cameras. Ready? Cheese. I gotta get landscape now. Cheese. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming. Everybody have yourself a great weekend. And if you have anything you ever need, feel free to reach out. So,
It was nice to meet you
Thanks.
all.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Great to
thank
meet
you
you guys.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Take care.